What does it really mean to find redemption when everything seems lost? Have you ever faced a moment where you felt like there was no way out, no hope, no future? What if I told you that the story of someone from thousands of years ago could hold the key to finding light in your darkest days? Ruth's story is one of those hidden gems in the Bible that speaks straight to the heart. Here was a woman, a Moabite widow in a foreign land, facing unimaginable loss and hardship. She had no family left, no wealth, and certainly no guarantee of a better future. Yet, her journey is one of hope, loyalty, and most importantly, transformation. In today's video, we're going to uncover how Ruth's story isn't just a distant, ancient tale. It's a story that can change how we view our own struggles. It teaches us about redemption, the power of loyalty, and how even when life seems like it's falling apart, there's always the possibility of something greater ahead. Stay with me, because Ruth's journey is more than just a biblical account. It's a message that speaks directly to the challenges and hopes we face in our lives today. Ruth's story begins in a time of hardship, loss, and uncertainty. She wasn't born into privilege or wealth, and she certainly didn't have an easy start in life. Ruth was a Moabite, from a nation that wasn't exactly known for its friendly relationship with Israel. In fact, the Moabites were often seen as enemies of the Israelites. So, right from the beginning, Ruth's life was full of challenges. But her real struggle began after she married an Israelite man. Ruth's husband, along with his brother and father, moved from Bethlehem to Moab to escape a severe famine. During their time there, tragedy struck. First, Ruth's father-in-law passed away, and then, shortly after, her husband died as well. Ruth found herself alone in a foreign land, widowed, without children, and with no apparent way to provide for herself. She was left in an incredibly vulnerable position, an outsider, with no protection, no rights, and no obvious path forward. In that culture, being a widow without a male relative to care for you was one of the most hopeless situations a woman could face. Yet, it's in this moment of utter loss that Ruth's story begins to turn. We often think of people who face despair as being completely hopeless, but Ruth's life shows us that even in the most difficult situations, there is always a choice. She could have given up. She could have turned her back on her mother-in-law Naomi, gone back to her family in Moab, and started over. But instead, Ruth chose to stay, to stand by Naomi, and to face whatever the future held with courage. It's easy to look at Ruth's situation and think, how could anyone survive that? How could anyone find hope in such darkness? But Ruth's story is a reminder that even when the odds are stacked against us, there's always room for faith. There's always room for the unexpected. And that's exactly what Ruth's story teaches us today. Just like Ruth, there are many people in the world right now facing difficult circumstances, whether it's the loss of a loved one, a broken relationship, financial hardship, or just a feeling of being lost and alone. If Ruth, a woman with so much working against her, could hold on and make it through, maybe there's hope for us too, no matter what we're facing. The moment when Ruth made her decision to stay with Naomi is one of the most profound in her entire story. Naomi, Ruth's mother-in-law, had already experienced more than her fair share of grief. She had lost her husband, her 2 sons, and now she was returning to Bethlehem alone with no one to care for her. She tried to send Ruth and her sister-in-law Orpah back to their own families in Moab, encouraging them to rebuild their lives. Naomi even said, "Why would you stay with me? I have nothing to offer you." Most people in Ruth's position would have taken the easy way out. They would have returned home to the familiarity of their own people, to the comfort of their own culture. But Ruth didn't do that. Instead, she made a bold and unwavering choice that would shape her entire future. She responded to Naomi with words that have echoed through history. "Don't urge me to leave you or to turn back from you. Where you go, I will go, and where you stay, I will stay. Your people will be my people, and your God, my God." This decision wasn't just about loyalty. It was an act of faith. Ruth had no idea what lay ahead. She was walking into an uncertain future, as an outsider in a land where she had no family, no connections, and no guarantee of survival. But she chose to stand by Naomi, knowing it would be hard. She chose to embrace Naomi's God, even though it meant leaving behind everything she knew. Loyalty, like this, is rare. In today's world, it's easy to walk away from difficult relationships when things get tough. We live in a time when convenience and self-interest often outweigh commitment and sacrifice. Ruth's decision, though, stands as a powerful example of the strength that comes from choosing loyalty, especially in the face of adversity. What Ruth did was more than just a promise to her mother-in-law. She was making a covenant not just with Naomi, but with Naomi's God. And it was that act of loyalty that would set in motion the rest of her journey. In a world that often tells us to look out for number one, Ruth's story reminds us of the incredible power of standing by those we love, especially when it's hard. Loyalty isn't always easy, but it is always worth it. And sometimes it's that loyalty that opens the doors to the blessings and opportunities we never could have imagined. Ruth's decision shows us that even in the most challenging moments, we can make choices that change everything. It shows us the power of loyalty, not just to others, but to the people and values that matter most, especially when everything around us seems uncertain. After Ruth made the brave choice to stay with Naomi, life didn't suddenly get easier. They arrived in Bethlehem at the start of the barley harvest, but they had nothing. No home, no wealth, and no one to support them. Ruth could have waited for someone to come to their aid, but she didn't. Instead, she took matters into her own hands, demonstrating an incredible level of determination. Ruth went to the fields to glean, the practice where the poor were allowed to pick up leftover grains after the harvesters had passed through. This was hard, physical labor, and Ruth knew it wouldn't be easy, but her determination to take care of Naomi was stronger than any obstacle she faced. She didn't wait for handouts, she worked tirelessly, gleaning whatever she could to feed both herself and Naomi. In doing so, Ruth showed us something essential. When life seems to offer nothing, you can still choose to make something of it. Ruth's grit and hard work became a defining part of her character. She could have easily given up, but she chose not to. She worked hard, trusting that somehow her efforts would lead to something more. It's so easy to become discouraged when we're faced with difficult circumstances. Life can feel like an uphill battle, and there may be times when it feels like we're doing everything we can, yet nothing seems to change. But Ruth's story teaches us that even when the situation feels hopeless, our actions still matter. Sometimes it's the daily, sometimes unnoticed efforts that make all the difference. Ruth didn't wait for a miracle to fall from the sky, she put in the work. And in that simple yet profound decision, she opened the door for the unexpected to happen. She didn't know it at the time, but her determination and willingness to work hard in the field would lead her straight to a moment of grace, one that would forever change her life. Ruth's journey isn't just about waiting for a breakthrough. It's about doing the best we can in the moment, trusting that our efforts aren't in vain. It's a reminder that, just like Ruth, we are called to act, to show up, and to trust that, even when things seem uncertain, our hard work will eventually lead us toward a brighter future. Just when Ruth's hard work seemed to be going unnoticed, something incredible happened. As she continued to glean in the fields, she caught the eye of Boaz, a wealthy landowner who happened to be a relative of Naomi. At first, Boaz didn't know Ruth's story, but he saw something in her. He noticed how she worked tirelessly in the fields, showing great humility and dedication to Naomi. He learned that she was a foreigner, a widow who had chosen to stay with her mother-in-law and care for her despite the hardships she faced. Boaz was moved by Ruth's loyalty and kindness, so he took action. He told his workers to leave extra grain behind for her, ensuring that Ruth would have more than enough to take home. He even personally invited her to join his workers at mealtime, offering her food and protection. But this wasn't just simple generosity, it was a deliberate act of provision. This moment in Ruth's life is a powerful example of God's timing and divine provision. Ruth could have spent years struggling in poverty, but God used Boaz to open a door of opportunity that would change everything. Boaz's kindness was not a coincidence. It was part of a greater plan. At the right moment, Ruth's hard work and faithfulness intersected with Boaz's generosity, and that moment set the stage for what would become a life-changing transformation. For Ruth, it wasn't just about finding a good man. It was about God providing for her exactly when she needed it. In the same way, there are times in our own lives when we feel like we're struggling on our own, putting in the effort with little to show for it. But Ruth's story teaches us that sometimes our breakthrough comes not because we've done everything right, but because God's timing is perfect. It's a reminder that even when we can't see the next step, God is always working behind the scenes. Boaz's actions were more than just kindness. They were a reflection of God's provision, guiding Ruth toward redemption, even when she couldn't have known what was coming. Ruth didn't know that her chance encounter with Boaz would be the turning point of her life, but she trusted that her hard work wasn't in vain. In today's world, it can be easy to feel like we're struggling alone. But the story of Ruth reminds us that just when we think there's no way forward, God is at work, sometimes through people we least expect. It's not about instant results. It's about trusting that in God's time, He will provide exactly what we need. Ruth's story takes its most significant turn when Boaz, moved by her loyalty and kindness, agrees to marry her. But this wasn't just a marriage. It was an act of redemption, not just for Ruth, but for Naomi and their entire family. In ancient Israel, there was a law called the kinsman redeemer law. This law allowed a close relative to marry the widow of a deceased relative in order to preserve the family's inheritance and protect the widow. Boaz, as a relative of Naomi's late husband, had the right to marry Ruth and redeem their family's legacy. But there was a catch. Another relative was technically a closer kin, and according to the law, he had the first right of refusal. Boaz, however, was willing to do whatever it took to ensure Ruth's security, and he bravely took the matter to the town gate where public legal decisions were made. When the closer relative declined, Boaz stepped in and publicly declared his intent to marry Ruth. This act was more than just securing Ruth's future. It was an act of grace and honor, as Boaz ensured that the family name and inheritance would be preserved. This marriage was not just about love or duty, it was about redemption. Ruth, a foreign widow with no family, was now married to Boaz, a man of means, and her life was transformed. But this redemption went beyond Ruth's personal security. By marrying Ruth, Boaz also provided a future for Naomi and restored her family line. And the story doesn't stop there. Ruth's and Boaz's union would lead to the birth of a son, Obed. Obed would be the father of Jesse, and Jesse would be the father of David, the greatest king of Israel. This family line eventually leads to another great Redeemer, Jesus Christ. In fact, Ruth's story becomes a vital part of the genealogy of Jesus, showing that redemption, hope, and grace come through even the most unlikely people and situations. For Ruth, the rewards of her loyalty, hard work, and faithfulness were immense. She went from being a widow with no future to being a beloved wife, a mother, and the great-grandmother of Israel's greatest king. But it wasn't just Ruth who was redeemed. Her entire family, her community, and even the history of Israel were changed because of her choices. This part of Ruth's story reminds us that redemption isn't just about fixing one problem. It's about restoring what was lost and creating something new. When we choose faith and loyalty, even in the hardest moments, we open ourselves up to a transformation that can affect not only our lives, but the lives of those around us. Ruth's story is a powerful reminder that redemption is always possible, no matter how broken or hopeless the situation may seem. It shows us that God is always working in our lives, even when we can't see the bigger picture. Ruth's decision to trust in God's timing, to remain loyal, and to take action opened the door for an incredible future. And her story continues to inspire us today. Ruth's journey isn't just an ancient story. It's a blueprint for how we can live our lives today. Her life was marked by faith, perseverance, and unexpected grace. Ruth faced loss, loneliness, and overwhelming odds. Yet through her choices, she found redemption. Her story reminds us that even in the toughest moments, we can remain loyal, trust God's timing, and work hard toward a better future. Just like Ruth, we all have the opportunity to transform our lives through the choices we make. It's in those moments of struggle, when things seem the hardest, that God is often doing His greatest work in us. Ruth didn't wait for life to hand her an easy solution. She chose faith and took action, and that's where her transformation began. Now, think about your own life. Is there a situation where you need to trust in God's timing, stay loyal, or work harder even when things seem impossible? Remember, redemption often comes when we least expect it, and it can be bigger and more powerful than we could ever imagine. If you found inspiration in Ruth's story, don't forget to subscribe, like, and share this message with others who might need a reminder that hope and redemption are possible no matter where you're starting from.